Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Azure podcast with your hosts, Sam Foote.
And Alan Armstrong.
If you're new here, we're a pair of Azure and Microsoft 365 focused IT security professionals. It's episode 3 of season 5. Alan and I had a recent discussion around Azure AI Content Safety. Here are a few areas that we covered. What is content safety and the scenarios that it's used for? What is Azure AI Content Safety? The products contained within Azure AI Content Safety, and what are the SKUs and how much does it cost? We've noticed that a large number of you aren't subscribed. If you do enjoy our podcast, please do consider subscribing. It would mean a lot for us for you to show your support to the show. It's a really great episode, so let's dive in. Hey Alan, how are you doing this week?
Hey Sam, not doing too bad. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. I think the highlight for me this week has been secure global access. I've seen you doing a lot of testing of it this week. It seems really promising, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely growing. Well, it's always been an interest since it's been out, but it's definitely growing on me on how to use it. So yeah, just got to find out how much it's going to cost.
I don't think I've had a conversation with anybody that hasn't thought that it's a great idea, if that makes sense. And it always ends up in how much is it going to cost, and that's like the I don't know million or $1 billion question, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, because we just need to understand how it compares to the other solutions out there in the market. And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Anything else that's been exciting tech wise in the Microsoft space over the last week or so?
can't think of anything. It's been pretty busy at work, so not been a chance to sort of catch up with too much. Probably last week they were doing all the part not virtual parties for the new start of the year for all the customer connection programs for security, management, and Entra. So yeah, just catching up with those and what the new badge system is, or what the plan is for the program this year. So that's been good to catch up on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're a really great source of getting involved with the technology really early on and sort of helping to shape, early feedback for those products, right? Sort of the private preview stage before, public preview, right?
Yeah, definitely, and be able to shape some of them as well. So it's good to give feedback early and get it tuned more for the wider the wider world of use.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, definitely.
cool. So Sam, what's this week's episode about then?
Yeah, so I'm going to be covering Azure AI content safety, um, and it's quite an interesting use of cognitive services within Azure. Um, I feel like it's a safety product, and that's obviously in the name. But I think it's a real good use case of AI. I think it's got actual tangible, benefits to it. I've been playing around with it a little bit, learning more about it. So yeah, it feels like a. I don't really hear it. I hadn't really noticed it until recently, and it's just something that I spent some time to understand and play around with, basically.
Cool. Yeah, no, I haven't really heard about it or known about it until you said about it the other last week on the podcast. So yeah, so shall we start from the basics then, and about why content safety is important?
Yeah, so I think to me, you know, we see content being created and uploaded into systems all the time. Probably the most prevalent example of that is a social network. You can take any picture that you like and upload it to your social media feed, as an example. So that does lead to scenarios where potentially harmful content is added to those social networks. Um, there is a big conversation about people's right to, you know, right to free speech, other people's right to privacy. We're not really going to go into those, those types of discussions, in this episode, um, because social media networks are more of a public facing display of content, right? You can see content from people without having to. Well, you have to maybe log into your account, but you can see content from anybody else a lot of the time. Sort of, public content. It might not actually be public; it might be behind a login, but it is public to the users of those networks. And then in other scenarios as well, if you think you upload content to OneDrive, as an example, the content that you upload there, you can consume that and use that data just for your own use, maybe for your organization or your personal OneDrive, but you can create sharing links and then, share that content forward and redistribute it. So in some scenarios, organizations may be have a regulatory reason to, or a desire to check the safety of that content as it's being uploaded. Um, and usually, this comes in the form of hateful, violent content. Maybe physical or emotional violence, um, and and increasingly, there is moderation that needs to happen on this content. We see it with social media networks where they will have content moderation teams, and that's effectively a massive human challenge at the moment. You have teams that have a finite bandwidth when it's in terms of how much content it can review, and also we also have to think about the real humans that are having to review all of that potentially harmful content that's being uploaded. So um and and it's very reactive in that mode, right? It could be somebody reporting something that's been up on that site for a x amount of time. So yeah, content safety is a real challenge, and I can't really claim to know the regulatory reasons, or the laws or legalities around what organizations have to do in terms of content safety. What responsibility they have to their users. I'm not 100% sure, but I can imagine that private organizations that have content being added, to them, would have a vested interest in making sure that content isn't harmful to other users on its platform. Just think about business scenarios. You uploading files into your CRM system or SharePoint, as an example. You as an organization might want to make sure that none of that content is harmful.
Okay, yeah, you're definitely right around having big teams, especially within the large organizations that deal with um, a lot of content, um, being able to, like you said, moderate it, and whether it's proactively as it's being uploaded, where possible, but also, like you said, the reporting of it within those applications or services can be challenging with resource, as you said. Um, so how can Azure AI content safety sort of help make that content safe?
Yeah. So content safety. But by the way, when we're talking about this, I'm not going to talk about any specific categories or um, of what that it checks for, because those categories can be quite disturbing what it looks for. I don't want to bring this conversation down at all, but I'm just going to talk more generally about what it looks for and how it looks for it, if that makes sense. But I won't go into specifics as I'm talking through it. Um, but really, what content safety is doing is it's primary use is for developers to check content as it's being ingested into their systems. So there are SDKs, there are APIs which you can hook into to automatically um, test content in effectively near real time. A user, drags an image onto your platform. You go to store that image, somewhere, some sort of repository. Maybe once it's dropped in, or as it goes to be dropped in, you can call Azure AI Content Safety, um, and you can effectively get an answer back into what sort of content is what sort of content category of content is inside of that content. Um, so just to call out, there's a REST API, there's a Python SDK, a C# SDK, a Java SDK, and a JavaScript SDK um, as well to go into it. It's and really what we are seeing is we are seeing um, this content safety being added into your ingestion pipeline inside of your application. So AI, especially trained AI models, are used to detect different categories of content um, as this data flows in. What's also great about it is there is a content studio which you can use. This is called the Content Safety Studio. So what you can do here is you can upload content to a portal that Microsoft has, and you could effectively test your configuration. Because what you can effectively do is you can say the types of content that you want to look for, and you can effectively tune it as it goes in. So this is a portal where you can upload um, dummy content, and you can see how the system would have reacted. What's also great is that you can also export the code for actually implementing that checking as well. It's probably worth me talking about the types of content and the sort of how the categories of that content works. So I'll dive into these a little in more depth afterwards, but we're looking at text moderation, image moderation, jailbreak risk detection, and I'll talk about what a jailbreak is because this was new for me, and protected material detection. So effectively looking for copyrighted material being uploaded. Now, what happens? So you have those different types of content that could be uploaded. Text, images. We'll use those as our ongoing examples. Then you have what's called harm categories for them. So these are all the different categories of content that these models are trained on. And then for each of those categories, there are what's called severity levels. So, when you're talking about any particular category, um, if you're looking for fairness in content as an example, it's not a binary yes or no. That content is fair or it's not, if that makes sense, right? It's going to be on a scale. And you as an organization can sort of decide where in that scale you start to flag and maybe where you start to block content if for review. Maybe you flag it for human review. So you might look at something and say, I want to look at content and whether it's fair. I'll use that as my example. And you might say once it gets to level, it goes from level 0, which is categorized as quote safe by the model, up to level 7. So you may say that actually, from the content that we're seeing, um, maybe our false positive rate is level 1 or level 2. So we won't flag anything unless it's level 2 and above for human review. And that's something that you're going to be able to monitor and test over time with that content studio, because it's probably worth calling out in that content studio. It's not just about um, it's not just about testing that content. You can monitor your online activity, so you can sort of see the logs as they flow in, about what what is being checked against and what levels um, of severity those different categories are hitting, basically. So you're able to see your false positive rate is, basically, based on the average data that you've pushed through. So to start off with, you could just push content through silently. Look at the content that comes through, start to pull out content to review, and start to really decide what levels that you want to start looking at.
Cool. Yeah, so I kind of see this as we're kind of talking about the people that are in uh, the market for doing the moderation. Potentially this is a mechanism to still keep that service there to do a human check in effect, but with the AI, in effect saying, like you said, if you've got a risk level or severity level, you might say that, like you said, if it's above 1, I want to flag it, but if it's above 4, just bin it, sort of thing. And then the the moderators aren't exposed to that content, and and the I don't know what you call it, the psychological thing that comes around with that
Yeah,
they potentially maybe will yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with it. So you can improve that, that's the morale or whatever it might be of that service, not having to look at this, the severe content. So it's kind of like you said, it's safe. It's kind of like, yeah, it's just it's doing your first part, your first scan, giving you that, bin it, or it just needs to check, sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's good in itself, even if you get that sort of part in it. Even if you, like you said, you can flag it all initially, but then you're going to have a severity that you just don't. If it's pretty confident, it's a 4 or a 5 maybe, or a 6. I don't know what. Again, it depends on the what application or what services you're providing. It might be that is just binned, got rid of, and no one has to deal with that. So that's really good, I think.
yeah. And I suppose, as you say, it's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about it like that. You're giving protection not just to your users, but also to your moderators as well, potentially,
Mm.
right? So you're sort of saying, actually, we're going to say that we're going to review everything level 1, 2, and 3. Anything other above that is never going to see the light of day, potentially. And I suppose that's where that free speech and responsible use of AI comes into the mix. I don't think we're here for the technology more than we are that debate. Um, but I suppose if you are an organization and it's your platform, I suppose in some respects you can decide what's on that platform, or not. I suppose what is appropriate, for what is appropriate content.
Yeah, exactly. And from the sound of it as well, it's very well integrated with a service that you or your application. That you've got a lot of SDKs already out. The REST API, it's pretty much maybe not drop and go, but ready, pretty ready to go to start sending stuff to it, sort of thing. So that's really good as well. Not to say I was expecting it not to be there, but
Yeah.
it's good to have a wide range of other, with other programming languages as well. It's not just a few of them. So, um, so yeah. So I get probably sort of tying onto this. How do you integrate content safety?
Okay, yeah. So let's talk about the different types of content. I suppose is probably a good place to start. Let's dive into those. So the first one is text moderation.
Hmm.
Probably the most, I don't know, it feels like the most simplistic type of input, really. Um, so what happens here is you send a payload, to the SDK or the API, of the text that you're searching, um, that you're analyzing, the types of categories that you want to test it for. There are various numbers of categories. I'm not going to go into them, but you can specify which ones you want to check against. You can define a block list as well, which is basically an override, and so you can add your own terms in for detection. So if you know there are specific uh, pieces of text content that you don't want to be uploaded, maybe it's like swear words or curse words. Maybe you just want to block, all of that. Um, you could add those in as well. That would be if that type of content was outside of the levels that were given in those categories. And then you can basically tell it what to output, basically, whether to use 4 severity levels or 8 severity levels. You could decide, you can tweak it. And then what it will do is it will return whether it matched any of those block list words, and then it will give you an analysis of the categories as well. So for each category, it'll tell you the severity inside that category that you checked against. The next one is image moderation. So very similar to what we saw before. We upload the image content as a base64 string, which to the API, which keeps it relatively simple to process and start checking against. There's no block list here. It's just against those categories, and again, you can define whether it's 4 or 8 severity levels for your output, and then you basically get back an array of the categories and the severities, the same as the text moderation. The next one I'm going to talk about is protected material detection. So this is really about trying to identify potential copyright content. So text, it supports text, so you can upload um, your text string, and it will detect basically whether it's potentially protected material that's been uploaded. Think song lyrics, articles, recipes, web content, that type of thing. This is the only one that I haven't actually used, and the documentation is quite weird for it, because you just give it the text, and then the model is trained on something, basically. So I don't know what the data set is that it's checking against on the other side of it. I haven't basically found that one for this yet. And let me just find. I just made a note of the yeah. So a jailbreak risk detection. So what this is, it's user prompts that are designed to provoke generative AI models into basically trick generative models into showing behaviors that it was trained to avoid, if that makes sense. If you ask ChatGPT naughty things, it will tell you it can't respond to it. I'm guessing you've never done that, have you, Alan? Just to test it out, see where the edges are, basically. I know I have, that's for sure. So this is really about understanding if those prompts are likely to try to elicit a response from a generative model. That is something that you don't want. So before it even hits the model to respond, you can test it as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because there's been some news sort of outbreaks of AIs, being jailbroken, I guess, as you said. So, was it one of the scenarios like you're saying? I know you can't say this, but can you say this, sort of thing? And it's like, oh, I can't say this, but then but then go off and bypass itself, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, trying to trick it into provoking a negative response. Can't sometimes not great for PR. So you might want to
No.
filter those filter the prompts with AI before you send those prompts to your AI model. So it's like AI on AI. It's Inception basically.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I just
No.
what's interesting is that there's a few different types of jailbreak attacks. I'll talk about those because they are effectively attacks against AI. Are they real people? Not yet, but we could probably talk about them. So, the categories for jailbreak risk detection are attempts to change system rules. So it's requests to use like unrestricted new um, prompts or responses. So it might be that you have, I don't know. I've never worked on a generative AI model. Do they have like a special way to ask questions to check the dev version or something like that in prod? I don't know how that gets used. Um, Embedding a conversation, a mocked up conversation to confuse the model. So yeah, it's trying to um, provide a conversation which then basically screws up the model output. I've never seen that done or even heard of that, but apparently that's a thing. Role play scenarios where you're effectively instructing the AI to pretend to be something or somebody to change its response characteristics. um, and encoding attacks, character transformation methods, ciphers, or other natural language variations to circumvent system rules. So I think an example of this is going to be is when you used to see certain like phishing links where they've got slightly off different letters basically that they use, like accented. I don't know the actual term, but the different variations
Yeah.
of different characters in different languages. um we sometimes see emojis as well, don't we, get replaced out that represent, well, Unicode characters I should say, that represent
Mm.
similar looking words or pipes or X, Y, or Z. So there's a few different types of categories that you can use on jailbreak attacks.
Yeah, cool. Um, yeah, that's quite a lot, quite a few sort of types of attacks there. Like you said, didn't really think about you may need to protect against. But
Yeah, I mean, I've never had to protect a AI model against a jailbreak attack at all, have I? But I suppose this is the type of I suppose these are the types of scenarios in testing and security that you wouldn't even really know about as just like a normal user
mm,
of a system, right?
yeah, and it's good that the output as well from the from the text and the picture one is again it's very somewhat simplistic about the outcome. It's very to the point. There's no sort of beating around the bushes there. Oh well, I don't know. It's like severity's this, category's this, bang, you deal. You set what you want to do with it, sort of thing. So that's really good. Um, yeah. So how do you integrate? Come back to our question just before, sort of talking about the content types. Yeah, how do you integrate the content? There's your uh, content safety.
Yeah, so I think there's going to be the primary way that you would integrate it into your process or application stack is really going to be around those SDKs,
Yeah.
Python, C Sharp, Java, JavaScript, and then the REST API. And that REST API gives you that ability, to sort of hit it from sort of anywhere. There are some limits for the different types of checks. So, um, for instance, for text, let me just get that up because I made a note of that. The maximum text submission length is for 10,000 characters. But for protected material detection, it's only 1,000 characters. And it's also got a minimum length as well. So, dependent on the different types of detections that you want to run, you're going to need to look at the different uh, scenarios there. There's really good documentation on Learn. It's pretty self-explanatory once you get going. So you're going to integrate I'm not really sure what that process is going to be like. It's going to be different for every type of application. And then you can sort of test and validate what you're seeing through the studio. That's going to be one-time uploads of example content, and it's also going to give you that monitoring ability to look at the content that's flowing through there. Um, you can connect it to a virtual network. I have not gone to that length. So just like you can with cognitive services, I believe you can run this privately as well.
Yeah. Okay. It kind of makes sense because when your services come in from your front end and go through your VNets to the services rather than going across the internet. And I guess as well using that studio as well can validate your application because you can in effect use that studio to get the scoring and then just confirm that when you throw it through the APIs, SDKs, it should be the same service, but you're just validating that connection is correct and you're getting your output the same, aren't you? So at least
Yeah.
you can um, trust. You can trust the outcome. Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there is a really good section on the responsible use of AI in the documentation as well, about talking about letting users know that there's moderation and what your moderation policies are, being very open that you're using AI to sort of enhance that as well. And there's some really good documentation on about how you tune your severity levels and your best practices and trying to understand what's going on. It actually really defines what a good feedback loop is and a moderation loop for this content as well. So yeah, there's a big long sort of page on that, so it's definitely worth checking out.
Cool. Yeah. Definitely sounds like you said. It's definitely well documented and yeah, best practice there. Okay. Sounds great. I guess the $1 million question might be how much does it cost?
Okay, so there's a free and a standard version. So we always like a good free version. So it's put into two. I'll talk about free to start off with because hopefully that will stay free. It is GA, so maybe it's gonna hopefully it's gonna stay like that. For text, jailbreak risk detection and protected material detection, they're all text records, right? So you get 5,000 text records each month, but um, a text record is every block of 1,000 characters, basically.
Okay.
Um, so um, so basically, if you sent 1,000 words, that would be one of your text records. If you sent 2,000 characters, sorry, not words, characters, 1,000 characters, 2,000 characters would consume two text records, basically.
Uh, And I'm guessing if you sent 500, that would be one text record as well.
I
Or do you
think
think it?
so. I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, basically. Um, Yeah. So their example, if a text input sent to the API contains 500 characters, it will count as one text record.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know
Yeah.
about lower than that. I assume that just means one, would be my guess. Could be.
Yeah.
Um, so there's 5,000 text records per month on free. There's also 5,000 images as well for image detection. So you can do 5,000 images a month, and there's seemingly no limit. There's no chopping of that up or anything like that. What's interesting is I can't see anything in the documentation for how many categories you search multiplies that, right? Because I would have thought that every time you hit a different category, it would charge you for a text record potentially.
Hmm.
I can't see any evidence of that. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the case. But there's nothing
Yeah.
on the pricing page to say that.
Yeah. Because you'd feel like it's doing another search against another model, then, wouldn't you? So it's kind of like you said, another submission in effect.
Yeah. Um, okay, so that's free. So that's just that there's a hard limit of 5,000 each side for free. Then you move up to standard, which is the same bucketing on each side, but it's dollars will go for dollars. We'll go East US. Um, yeah, that's probably worth talking about that I haven't talked about. Okay, fine. I'll remind myself in a second. Um, US pricing in East US is 75 cents per 1,000 text records. So a text record is up to 1,000 characters, and images is $1.50 per 1,000 images. So I think that's I don't know how much it costs to run a moderation team like at a social network. I've got no absolutely no idea how much it costs them to to moderate a singular image. I don't know that. Um, and this isn't something that I've ever done at scale, so I don't know if that's competitive pricing. Like 1,000 images for $1.50 sounds pretty good to me, but you know,
0.15 cent at that point per image.
yeah. But if you like, I take the example, like if you let's say you went on holiday and then you uploaded like 100 images to Facebook or something, done dump up to Facebook, right? You know, it could be that like if you upload 100 images, that's going to cost you 15 cents, right? It's going to cost them 15 cents to check all of those images for safety,
One
right?
1.5 cent. That's even less. 100. Oh no,
No, it's 15
mass.
cents. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, mass.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um
Ugh.
so but I don't know. Is it worth, doing that? And I suppose it really depends on your organization. Because what's really good is, let's say you had a niche B2B. Let's say you had a private social network for like local businesses in your area, as an example. I don't know. Maybe you wouldn't have this requirement. Maybe people will upload and chat to each other, but maybe there's not that many users. Maybe you've only got 500 businesses in your directory, in your little mini social network. And you want to protect against people's accounts being hacked and, harmful content being uploaded. If you don't have a lot, let's say in your application you only upload 10,000 images a month, right? Might not even do that. That would only be $15 a month, wouldn't it? To have either to block it and have peace of mind that it's blocked, or even to give you a way to technically create a moderation, or the starting point, a detection for your moderation platform.
Yeah, that's great, isn't it?
It's good that you can get started for basically nothing. But that's like a lot of PaaS and sort of SASE, um, solutions in Azure. It's by the time that you have to do 1 million images per month, you're probably at a scale where you could probably create something of your own potentially, right? And I'm guessing all the big players, they must have their own versions of these. I don't know. Maybe that's why this exists. Um, but when you're starting out, at least you've got the ability to get started with very little upfront investment, right? Which is
Right,
only a
even
positive thing, right?
yeah, even and start like your development with it. You haven't got to pay a big
No,
price up front. I mean, even though £1, $1.50 isn't much, even if you had to go up to that sort of tier. But
well, you do have to integrate with the SDK, don't
yeah,
you? And you have to integrate it with your moderation process or create a moderation process, don't you?
mm,
If you don't have one, so there's potential costs there as well. But the core actual detection, which I suppose is the hard part, because everything else is just, I don't know, other, you know, moderation or moving images around. It's not exactly that complex as a problem, right?
yeah.
So yeah. So oh yeah, the only other one thing is it's not available in every region at the moment. It's quite specific. So East US, I'm scrolling down the list on the pricing page, so I get it. West Europe, and that is basically it. So yeah, if that is an issue, data sovereignty could be an issue there for you as well. So currently only in those locations, but it does have VNet support. So in theory, you could secure the data in and out to back to your region, I suppose, couldn't you? There are ways to get around sort of public transiting of your data, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, true. And I guess at least there's one in GDPR environment, I suppose
Correct.
in
Europe,
over
yeah.
over yeah in Europe, and then you got the US one, which is probably where it started off anyway. It wouldn't surprise, it'll probably go to the other ones, just waiting for the AI cards to be available and manufactured
Exactly, because
probably.
that's the same that we see with a lot of the AI solutions, isn't it? It's only in very limited places, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's in effect the goal from the Ignite, wasn't it? That they'd got new chips and it's just manufacturing them and getting them out and building new AI supercomputers in the data centers. So yeah, cool. Okay, yeah, that sounds really really good and cost effective as well. I think for um, that service, even processing the images is with a reasonable price, and like we said, it's protecting those moderators having to see potentially paying 0.15 of a cent to stop someone seeing
Yeah, yeah,
a unsafe image is, I think, worth it, definitely.
yeah. Or different content
Yeah.
teams, 100%. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, do you think there's anything else you want to talk about around this?
No, no, it's just something that I thought was I felt that it was a good use of AI, to be
Mm.
totally honest with you. And I like it when we do have some really useful, because generating images of squirrels is great, that's great. And classification problems that are solved with AI are really powerful. But this, I feel, is an actual, there's a safety element there, which just, sits right with me, to be totally honest with you. So yeah, it's a good use of AI.
Cool. Is there any episodes we previously did around any AI services? I know we've probably talked about Copilot a couple of times recently, but is there any other Azure services that we've talked about?
Back in season 3, episode 11, we did Azure Cognitive Services. I don't know how out of date that episode is now, but the core of it will still be there. Um, and a lot of this technology is built on top of cognitive services in the background. So, yeah, if you want to look at other AI related technology that's not specifically niche down into this use case, go and check out Azure Cognitive Services.
Cool.
Alan, what's the next episode that we got lined up?
Yes. So I think I mentioned it last week that we haven't done a Defender for Endpoint episode. Um,
Holy
considering that
moly!
considering that I've probably talked about it quite a few times, and I pretty much do it day to day. It's sort of not bread and butter, but it's dealing with it every day sort of thing. I've not can't believe I forgot about it. So yeah, we're going to do an episode on Defender for Endpoint, what it covers, how it works, how its deployment is slightly different to other AV and EDRs solutions. So I think that's worth calling out. And yeah, some of the other bits and features that you get with it, because I think it's quite a powerful tool set there.
Yeah, you're going to be able to cover what it integrates with in like 40 minutes or whatever, Alan. Or we're just going to whistle stop
We so
through
we've done
it.
some we've covered some sections of it, like in piecemeal, I think,
Yeah,
like Defender vulnerability management that we've talked about before and things
yeah,
like that. But then just never actually, the AV itself and EDR, which like
yeah,
completely missed it. So yeah, we should be able to do it. If not, we'll be whistle stop touring on it.
yeah. Or it'll be like a 3-hour episode. Yeah.
No,
No,
don't
it's all
worry, it
cool.
won't be.
Nice.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So, did you enjoy this episode? If so, please do consider leaving us a review on Apple or Spotify. This really helps us reach out to more people like you. If you have any specific feedback or suggestions, we have a link in our show notes for you to get in contact with us.
Yeah, and if you've made it this far, thank you ever so much for listening, and we'll catch you up on the next one.
Yeah. Thanks all.